You know the voice. It's liquid velvet. It is the sound of pure seduction. Marvin Gaye gave the world sexual healing, and let's get it on. He was the man who taught the world how to love. But behind the music genius, there was a nightmare you wouldn't wish on your worst enemy. A life defined by paranoia, depression, and a daddy issue so toxic it ended in blood.
As I look back at my defeats and my problems and all of the things that I can sink into depression about, there was somebody that loved me.
Here is the ultimate paradox, the sickest joke in music history. The Prince of Peace was murdered on April 1st, 1984, by his own father, with a gun that Marvin bought for him. But that bullet was just the final blow. To understand why Marvin died, you have to look at how he loved. His romantic life wasn't just messy, guys. It was a full-blown psychological horror movie.
How do you feel about love?
I don't know. Love is misery. Love is miserable. I think I'll be a bachelor and I'll swing and I won't fall in love. I'll just be loveful, be kind and good and have fun. I don't feel like being miserable.
We are talking about a man who married a woman 17 years older than him and then replaced her with a girl 17 years younger. A symmetry so creepy it feels like a curse. Today on Love and Music, we are opening the Gaye files. We are breaking down the complete tragic dating history of Marvin Gaye. From the power struggle with the Queen of Motown, to the crushing death of his soulmate, to the teenage muse who faced the blade of a knife. This is the story of a man searching for salvation in the arms of women, only to find his own destruction. And it all starts with the woman who held the keys to the kingdom, Anna Gordy. Anna Gordy, the Queen of Motown. To understand Marvin Gaye, you have to understand the woman who arguably made him and almost broke him. Meet Anna Gordy. The year is 1960. Marvin is just a 20-year-old session drummer with a dream. He's nobody. But Anna, she is royalty. She's the older sister of Berry Gordy, the founder of Motown Records. She's a business executive, she's powerful, and she is 17 years older than Marvin. Now, let's keep it 100. Marvin was arguably the original clout chaser. He admitted later that he was hooked on Anna, but he also knew the game. Marrying the boss's sister, that's a fast pass to stardom. He pursued her relentlessly. After a 3-year chase, Anna finally gave in. They tied the knot in June 1963. For the cameras, they were the ebony power couple. She was the mature, steady hand, he was the rising superstar. But behind the closed doors of their Detroit mansion, it was an absolute war zone. We are talking full-blown soap opera drama. The dynamic was toxic from day one. Anna was reportedly used to being the boss, at work and at home. Insiders claimed the arguments turned physical, screaming matches, flying objects. Marvin later said he couldn't be controlled, but Anna wasn't the type to back down. And yet, the toxicity fueled his music. Early on, he wrote Pride and Joy for her. He was head over heels. Anna even co-wrote songs with him, including the classic God Is Love. She was his muse. But as Marvin's fame grew, so did his ego and his wandering eye. You know the song I Heard It Through the Grapevine? That paranoia in his voice? That wasn't just acting, that was real life. By the late 60s, infidelity had deeply soured the marriage. Marvin was out in the streets, and Anna knew it. But guys, the cheating wasn't even the wildest part. If you want the real tea, we have to talk about the baby. This is where the story gets incredibly messy. By the time they married, Anna was in her 40s. She couldn't conceive. So, according to reports, she faked a pregnancy to the public, patting her stomach, the whole 9 yards. In November 1965, they announced the birth of their son, Marvin Gaye III. But here is the receipt that will blow your mind. The biological mother wasn't a stranger. It was Anna's niece, Janis Gordy, and she was only 15 or 16 years old when the child was born. Denise later claimed she simply had the baby for her aunt because Anna wanted one so badly. But for decades, rumors have swirled that Marvin himself was the biological father, meaning he had a child with his wife's teenage niece. Wild. Let that sink in. This was the level of dysfunction happening while Marvin was singing about peace and love. Fast forward to 1973. The couple moves to Los Angeles, but the marriage is dead on arrival. Marvin files for separation. Why? Because he had just met a 17-year-old girl named Janis Hunter, but we'll get to her in Chapter 3. The divorce proceedings were nasty. Anna wasn't going to walk away empty-handed. In 1976, a judge ordered Marvin to pay $600,000 in alimony. The problem? Marvin was broke. He had blown his fortune on bad investments, cars, and heavy drug use. So Marvin's lawyer comes up with a genius, crazy idea. Marvin would give Anna the rights to his next album, half the advance and half the royalties until the $600,000 was paid off. Anna agreed. She probably thought she was getting another smooth, romantic Let's Get It On album to cash in on. Oh, was she wrong? Marvin went into the studio and recorded Here, My Dear. It wasn't a love album. It was a 73-minute diss track dedicated to Anna. He laid out everything. The arguments, the jealousy, the hypocrisy. He literally sang about how much money she wanted. He titled the album Here, My Dear, as in, here is your money, now leave me alone. When Anna heard it, she was humiliated. She threatened to sue him for invasion of privacy for $5 million. But eventually, she just let it go. The album was a commercial flop at the time because it was too weird, too personal. But time heals all wounds, even the deepest ones. By the early 80s, after Marvin had married and divorced again, he and Anna actually reconciled, not as lovers, but as friends. When Marvin won his Grammys in 1983 for Sexual Healing, Anna was there. She stood by him. Despite the lawsuits, the Spite album, and the niece pregnancy scandal, there was a bond there that couldn't be broken. She eventually scattered his ashes after his murder. But while Anna was the wife, there was another woman in the 60s who owned Marvin's musical soul, a woman he never slept with, but whose death destroyed him. That's next. Tammy Terrell, the tragic soulmate. While Marvin was fighting a war at home with Anna, he found peace in the studio with someone else. In 1967, Motown paired him with Tammy Terrell. And let me tell you, this wasn't just a collaboration. It was lightning in a bottle. Look at that chemistry. The way they looked at each other. Call my name, I'll be there. The way their voices blended. The public was convinced, absolutely convinced, that they were sleeping together. I mean, you can't fake that kind of heat, right? Wrong. Here is the insider truth. They were never lovers, not once. Marvin, the man who chased everything in a skirt, treated Tammy like the little sister he never had. She was his kindred spirit. For a man surrounded by sharks, she was his only safe haven. But this fairy tale has a horror movie ending. It all came crashing down on October 14, 1967. They were performing at a college in Virginia. They were singing Your Precious Love. Right in the middle of the song, Tammy stopped singing. She stumbled, and then she collapsed straight into Marvin's arms. Marvin carried her off stage himself. The diagnosis? A malignant brain tumor. For the next 3 years, while Marvin was releasing hits, Tammy was fighting for her life. She underwent multiple surgeries, blind and weak. Tammy Terrell died on March 16, 1970. She was only 24. Marvin was absolutely destroyed. At her funeral, he gave the eulogy. In fact, he was the only person from the Motown machine that Tammy's family allowed to attend. That tells you everything you need to know about how real their bond was. Her death broke him. He went into seclusion. He stopped performing. His cocaine use skyrocketed.
Worst moment in the last 7 years?
Well, the absolutely worst rock bottom moment in the last 7 years when I tried to commit suicide through an overdose of cocaine.
He felt guilty that he was alive and she wasn't. But from that pain, a new Marvin emerged. He stopped trying to be a pop star and started writing What's Going On. But just as he was finding his musical voice, he was about to meet the girl who would unleash his darkest demons. Next, Chapter 3. Knives, Abuse, Obsession. This is where it gets dangerous. Janis Hunter, the teenage muse and the toxic descent. If Anna Gordy was the business, Janis Hunter was the obsession. This is the chapter that changes everything. This is where the music gets sexier, but the man gets darker. March 1973. Marvin is 33, legally separated from Anna and feeling old. He's in the studio recording Let's Get It On. Then walks in Janis Hunter. She's the daughter of jazz legend Slim Gaillard. She has wild hair, big eyes, and an undeniable swag. There is just one problem. Janis is much younger. She's literally a high school student. But Marvin, he didn't care. He was struck by what he called a sexual thunderbolt. The chemistry was instantaneous. Insider story, Marvin wrote the song If I Should Die Tonight right after their very first date. He was convinced she was sent by God to save his youth. Make no mistake, Janis is the reason Let's Get It On sounds the way it does. She was the muse. She revived him. They moved in together almost immediately. But here is where the fairy tale turns into a psychological thriller. Marvin wasn't just looking for a girlfriend, he was looking for a possession. He made her drop out of high school. Why? Because he was jealous. He told her he could teach her more than any school could. But the real reason? He was terrified of her being around, quote, strapping young high school football players. He wanted her world to be him. They had 2 kids quickly, Nona and Frankie. And this is where Marvin's cruelty really came out. According to Jan's explosive memoir, After the Dance, Marvin began to body shame her. He criticized her stretch marks, he criticized her breasts, he told a 22-year-old woman that she was ruined. He was projecting his own insecurities onto her, breaking her self-esteem so she wouldn't leave. And then the mind game started. This is the part that usually gets left out of the biopics. Marvin developed a dark, twisted fantasy. He started pushing Jan toward other men. It wasn't an open relationship, it was a test. He would coerce her into situations, voyeurism, group acts, just to watch. Jan said he did it out of perverted delight, but also to torture himself. He would tell her afterward that it was exciting to watch her fall from purity. It was sick. But Jan, she wasn't just a victim, she was a fighter. She eventually got tired of the games and decided to play back. She started having real affairs, and not with random guys, with Marvin's rivals. She hooked up with Frankie Beverly from the band Maze, and, wait for it, Teddy Pendergrass. That crushed Marvin. Teddy was the new sex symbol on the block. The jealousy drove Marvin into a drug-fueled psychosis. It all culminated in the knife incident. This is the scariest moment of her life. One day, high on a cocktail of psychedelic mushrooms and cocaine, Marvin snapped. He cornered Jan. He held a kitchen knife to her throat. But he didn't ask her to die. He begged her to provoke him. He screamed at her, begging her to say the wrong thing so he would be forced to end their misery. Miraculously, she talked him down. She survived. But the marriage, it was over. Jan took the kids and ran. The aftermath was messy. We're talking kidnapping messy. Marvin took their son Frankie to Hawaii and refused to give him back for over a year. He was spiraling, bankrupt, living in a bread van at one point. They officially divorced in the early 80s, but the toxicity lingered. During his final tour in 1983, they tried to reconcile one last time. It ended backstage. Marvin, paranoid and high, accused her of sleeping with his bass player. In a rage, he threw a scalding hot towel at her face. That was it. The final straw. Jan Gaye survived the fire. She wrote a memoir, After the Dance, exposing the monster behind the genius. She admitted that losing herself in Marvin was painful, but she eventually found peace. She even became friends with Anna Gordy later in life. 2 women, bonded by the scars left by the same man. Jan passed away in 2022, finally free from the shadow of the Prince of Soul. By 1981, Marvin had lost Jan, lost his money, and lost his mind. He fled America. he went into exile in Europe, and there he met the women who would witness his final strange days. Eugenie Viss, the European exile. 1980. Marvin is on the run. The IRS is chasing him for $4.5 million in back taxes. He flees to Europe, broken, addicted, and freezing cold. In Amsterdam, he picks up a Dutch model and devoted fan named Eugenie Viss. And guys, she thought she had hit the jackpot. She thought she was getting the Prince of Soul. Instead, she got the Prince of Ice. The insider reports from this era are disturbing. Eugenie expected romance, but Marvin was emotionally dead. He was reportedly impotent with her, and when she cried about it, he just stared at her. Zero empathy. He replaced love with control. There is a famous, creepy story where Marvin brought a whip into the bedroom. He didn't use it on her physically, but he used it psychologically, creating a dark, voyeuristic atmosphere to see how much she would tolerate. He was testing her loyalty through humiliation. The relationship destroyed her. Friends said she couldn't handle the darkness he brought into her life. Tragically, sources suggest that after he left her, she took her own life, another soul consumed by the orbit of Marvin Gaye. Marvin kept moving. He went from the Dutch underground to the British aristocracy. Get your teacups ready because he's about to date a lady. Chapter 5. The Princess and the Pop Star. Lady Edith Foxwell, the British aristocrat. Talk about a pivot. Marvin went from the gutters of his addiction straight to Downton Abbey. In 1982, he hooked up with Lady Edith Foxwell. She wasn't just rich, she was legitimate Irish aristocracy. The press called her the Queen of London nightlife because she ran the famous Embassy Club. She was eccentric, she was older, and she was absolutely obsessed with Marvin. It was the oddest couple in music history. Marvin moved into her massive estate in Wiltshire. Imagine the Prince of Soul sipping tea in the English countryside. It got serious fast. They didn't just date, they explicitly discussed marriage. Marvin finally thought he found a sugar mama who could save him. But the gay curse followed him across the ocean. The juicy, tragic secret here? Lady Edith reportedly got pregnant with Marvin's child. They were expecting. But Marvin was still battling his demons, paranoia and cocaine. The stress was too much for the relationship to bear. Lady Edith suffered a miscarriage. She lost the baby, and with it, Marvin's last hope for a stable European life. Brokenhearted, Marvin packed his bags. He released Sexual Healing, won his Grammys, and made the fatal mistake of returning to the US for one last tour. Deborah Decker, The Final Year. We are in the final lap now. 1983. Marvin is back in Los Angeles, fresh off his Sexual Healing comeback tour. He is paranoid, he is armed, and he is spiraling. Enter the last woman to ever love him, Deborah Decker. Deborah was an Englishwoman who was with him during the absolute chaos of his final months. And guys, the pattern repeats itself one last time. Just like Lady Edith, Deborah Decker reportedly became pregnant. She confirmed it in an interview with Parade magazine. But in a heartbreaking twist of fate, she suffered a miscarriage. Marvin lost another child. The grief pushed him over the edge. But here is the detail that gives me chills. Marvin knew he was in danger. He was living with his parents, and the tension with his father was explosive. So in a final act of love, he moved Deborah out. He set her up in an apartment in West Hollywood. He literally pushed her away to save her from the toxicity of that house. He isolated himself in the line of fire. Their relationship didn't end with a breakup. It ended on April 1st, 1984, when Marvin's father picked up the gun and shot him. The music stopped, but the legacy? That is complicated. Let's wrap this up. Synthesis of trauma. When you zoom out and look at the timeline, the pattern is undeniable. Marvin Gaye wasn't just bad at love. He was trapped in a cycle. From the controlling power dynamics with Anna Gordy to the Lolita obsession with Janis Hunter, he was constantly trying to resolve the trauma of his childhood through women. He spent his life running from a violent, cross-dressing preacher father who beat him for breathing wrong. Yet in his relationships, Marvin often became the very thing he hated: jealous, controlling, and volatile. It's the ultimate tragedy of abuse. The victim becomes the mirror. And that brings us to the darkest theory of all. Many insiders, including his sister, believe Marvin's death wasn't just a murder, it was suicide by proxy. He gave the gun to his father. He provoked the fight. He moved back into that house knowing it was a powder keg. He effectively hired his own father to end the pain he couldn't end himself. And the irony? He did this right after his biggest victory. He had just won 2 Grammys. He had just healed the world with sexual healing. But when the curtains closed, he couldn't heal his own heart. But even death couldn't stop the money machine. The Gaye name had one last fight left in it. The lasting influence. Marvin left behind more than just debt and headlines. His children, Nona and Frankie, the products of that chaotic love with Janis, became the keepers of the flame, and they proved they had their father's fight in them. In 2015, the Gaye family dropped the hammer on Robin Thicke and Pharrell Williams for ripping off Gotta Give It Up with blurred lines. They won a massive $7.4 million verdict. Even from the grave, the Prince of Soul is still clearing checks and winning battles. Now, I've got to ask you the question that tears the fan base apart. Who was the true love of Marvin's life? Was it Anna Gordy, the woman who made him a star? Or Janis, the muse who inspired his passion? Drop a comment below. Are you Team Anna or Team Jan? I'm reading everything comment. Like and subscribe for more deep documentaries like this. It was your girl Cherry. Peace.